Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 77 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the founder of the Camano Island Health System. Please welcome Dr. Brian Cooper. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, it's Brandon with the Camano Voice, and I am doing this episode, and this is going to be kind of like a kickoff to 2021. Oh, after I yawn, which is probably appropriate because we have had a crazy last year. And I wanted to do this episode as kind of a one, welcome back. Thank you, everyone that has been listening to the podcast. I've really enjoyed hearing from a few of you and getting to talk to these amazing guests and learn so much about really just all aspects of life. I've really enjoyed really everything about doing the podcast. And so I really, really am glad that people are actually out there and they're listening. I really appreciate you guys for your support. And again, just continuing to try and grow the podcast. So sharing it with your friends, posting about it, anything you can do to get the word out is super helpful for me. I really appreciate that. So looking back on 2020, it was, a crazy year for, I'm sure, everyone that is out there. In fact, I'd really be interested to hear from you guys. If you email me at voice@CamanoCommons, just tell me one or two things that you learned in 2020 that were really cool to you or really impactful. For me, I learned I actually learned a lot in 2020. Despite it being a weird year where you were, stuck at home, or for those business owners out there, your workload actually went through the roof because certain people couldn't work because of their age group or because of this or that. And there was so much fear and risk and everything going on that we were just scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, what is our next step? How do we keep the doors open for another day? So on the business side, I learned a lot about just being dynamic, and really no idea is a bad idea. And you just throw them out there and see what sticks and what you think people are going to go for. This is a while ago now, but we were launching our juice bar March 1st. That was our launch date. And we decided, we're like, all right. So we started doing marketing. We started getting coupons out to local businesses. And we launched it, and that week the news broke about, really the majority of stuff with COVID and everything like that. So all of a sudden, this exciting juice bar launch campaign completely fell flat on its face. And then not only that, but then we went into the stay-at-home orders, and so we were considered an essential business because we have coffee, we have grocery, and food service places were all considered essential businesses. So we stayed open during that whole time period. But just because we were open didn't mean we had business. It was very dead. It was very few people working because, one, we didn't need them, and two, a lot of people were concerned. Nobody knew what was going on, and so we were all very worried. And so the younger, healthier people were like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to be able to keep working, but some of our older staff had to stay home because we're like, it's not safe. Again, we just didn't know what we were doing. So we launched Juice Bar, that fell apart. And then our business went from, going fine to zero. And it was like overnight. And so we were just trying to figure out, like, what do we do? What's the next step? And again, you're trying to figure out, is this going to be a short time or is this going to be a long period? And it ended up being really, obviously, we're still in it. So at first it was like, well, this will probably they'll figure something out and we'll kind of get moving on in the next couple months or so. And obviously that didn't happen. And so just trying to work through all of that, communication with the team, communication with your team members when they're not always here. You've got different schedules. You're separating people the best you can. It put a lot of challenges on the business and just trying to work through all of those and really working closely with our management team here at the marketplace. It was, they stepped up in new ways. They had new, again, ideas of, well, what if we tried this? What if we tried this? And just really coming together to move the business forward and keep it going. So I can't say enough good things about my management team and just the team members that were here during that time period. So it was really, it's been an interesting year on the business side, a lot of growth in that side of just, again, like I said, being dynamic, all of that. Then from the podcast side, I was like, well, all my podcasts I've done or majority of them are in person because I enjoy that one-on-one interaction, face-to-face. The quality of the podcasts are much better. But I'd kind of dabbled in how do you do long distance, interviews? And anyways, so we had gone through a lot of that. And so then I had to try it because a lot of people, again, I wasn't able to meet face to face with them for interviews. And so had to learn, try doing Skype interviews and things like that. And we've continued to use that as our platform because I don't know how to use Zoom and I don't have a professional account on that. So there's limitations there when you don't have all those things. So I kept that. And but man, despite it being a crazy year, despite everything that was going on, we did an episode every week of the year last year. We released 52 new episodes last year, and that's crazy to me. And not to toot my own horn or anything, but I was like, wow, sometimes when you look back on a year, you look back and you're like, wow, I guess I wasn't just treading water or barely staying above. I was able to do that, and that was really exciting to me to be able to actually hit my goal of releasing an episode every week. Now, it's also okay to not always release an episode, as I'm starting this year off in January, near the end of January, because I didn't really release episodes in January because December is such a crazy month here at the store that I need to spend more time with the family after that, kind of a recovery period of I've got 4 kids and they're like, is daddy ever coming home? And so it's a crazy time of year in December. So I try and take some time off right after that to hang out with the family. And so I was able to do that. And really it was a great time to just kind of be with the kids and just, kids grow up so fast. I know everybody says that. Every parent says that. My kiddos are, not even, the girls, my oldest 2 will be 10 this year. And that's just mind-boggling because, they're hitting double digits. So it's weird to think of that. So really, I don't know, coming to terms with that, realizing we're over the halfway mark of when they're moving out. And that's just weird because you get used to it and everything. But then you look ahead and you're like, it's not that long. And so it's just, perspective on that. Just, so that's, starting the year off, missing the first few weeks of the podcast. But I've been thinking about a lot during that time. So I'm really excited for this coming year. Again, I've got a whole lot of guests and I keep getting suggestions from you guys. And again, I appreciate that. I love hearing about new businesses, new people in the community. And so I've really been enjoying that aspect of getting to hear, I'm looking at my guest list and I'm like, man, I just have so many people that I still want to interview on the podcast. And the other thing that I've really enjoyed too is coming back to guests that I've previously had on the podcast, because people evolve, they change, and there's new things that they're doing. There's new things that they're launching, new businesses they're starting. And especially in this year, it's just been really refreshing to be able to go back to some of the people I've already talked with. And it's kind of like when you watch or read a good book that's a series, or you watch a movie or a TV series. Like the first few episodes you're going through and you're just getting to know the characters and who they are. But like you don't really know what their motivation is, what they're doing, what's going on. But like you're learning about them. And I feel very similar when I bring back previous guests onto the podcast. It's like we've gotten through the backstory, we've gotten through the how did they get here, but we get to then dive deeper into what they're doing now and what their future is and what they want to do in the future. So I do feel like I'll be trying to lean into that as well. I'll probably bring on guests that you've already heard from, but like instead of just hearing their backstory and how they got to where they are now, we'll get to go deeper with them. What are your interests now? What are you doing now? What are the business ideas that you're working on? How are you evolving your business to deal with COVID? And so I look forward to that, bringing back some old guests. So that's been on the podcast level. The other thing is like I was looking back at the episodes and I got to interview a former Washington senator in episode 54 and 55 with Mary Margaret Haugen. And then I've interviewed doctors and pharmacists and the new fire chief. And I've got to interview like the new food director at the San Juan Camano Food Bank. And I got to speak with a U.S. representative in episode 60. And then I even got interviewed myself this year, which was kind of fun. And I have a couple people that are interested in they want to interview me again and kind of see where we are now. So that'll probably happen this year. And another thing is we are, I'm just double checking something. Sorry. I try and get 100% prepared, but it doesn't always happen. But we are 78 episodes plus bonus episodes. There was bonus episodes that we've done. In fact, this is going to be a bonus episode. But we've released 78 standard normal episodes through the Camano Voice. And that's a lot of episodes. Like a lot of podcasts don't get that far. And again, I'm just so grateful that people are actually listening and interested in Camano. But there's because it's grown over this last year, there's also a lot of podcast episodes that other people just haven't heard, haven't listened to. And so I really want to start doing like a Throwback Thursday episode, and it's not going to be every Thursday. It might only be like a couple times a month that I actually do this. But just kind of highlight stuff on my Instagram. So if you aren't following me there, follow me there at the Camano Voice. But just talking about some previous episodes, like, hey, you guys probably didn't hear about this episode when I interviewed this person. So I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've learned so much from each of these interviews. I just learned something new, and that varies in the aspect of what I'm learning from. I've learned a lot about art. I've mentioned that in the podcast and interviews before that I grew up and I don't know if it's an age thing or an interest thing, but I just was not super interested in art. I thought it was interesting that people did it, but it was one of those things that I was like, I'm not good at it, and I don't know how, I guess I just didn't have an appreciation for it. And over this last couple of years, especially interviewing artists and really digging into like their craft and what they do, and I've really been interested in like how art, how people come about to doing the art they do, whether that's painting or music or dancing. And it's just really interesting to hear about all of that and to find out what drives them. Why do they do this? When do they discover the talent that they have the talent for it? Because there's a lot of people too that are interested in art, but they just don't have the talent for it too. So there's all those different aspects at play that, I've gotten to learn about over the last year with my interviews of people. And so I really, I want to keep diving deeper into more of the artists that I've interviewed and re-interview artists that I've already interviewed. So there's just a lot going on, and I'm super excited for everything that's coming up. So that's kind of it on the podcast side as far as looking forward, looking backwards and forwards. And on the personal side, I've just learned a lot about being empathetic. And it's funny because I think as humans, we think that we are empathetic. We always think that we are unbiased and accepting of others and all these different things. And I think what I've learned over this last year is my just growing up and learning, and we are all raised in different ways. I mean, first of all, many of us were raised in America, and that by itself creates certain biases as you grow up. And it's not something you choose. It's not something that like you should be sorry about or offended from or anything like that. But we have these set of rules that we grow up with just because of the fact we grew up in America. I grew up in the Northwest, so I've got a set of rules from that I hold, to myself and that I have grown up with. And like, so from an aspect on that, I've grown, like, I thought I'm unbiased and I care about people and I'm willing to like, talk with anyone and all these different things that I've learned to say. But then when you actually dig into things and you start learning about things and other people, and specifically like this year, I learned a lot about Black lives and how there is this inequality between people that are Black and people that aren't. And just the difference that they have to deal with, the things they have to deal with. And that's been something that this past year I have learned a lot about. And again, that empathy, just I think it's enough. I'm not enough, but it's something that if we can educate ourselves, if we can learn from other people and their experiences, which is what the whole Camano Voice podcast has been for me, is talking to people, learning from people, and hearing their experience, and then learning from that. Because I'm not going to go through what they've gone through. I'm not going to experience what they've experienced, but I can glean from what they've learned. And so that is what I've done on the personal side throughout 2020. I've really gleaned from the Black community. And this is not like me interacting with them, but learning through books, through just talking, like listening to them through, different podcasts and stuff. And so I've learned a lot in that of just being empathetic. What I thought I would say at the beginning of 2020, I would have said, I'm empathetic. I care about all people. But saying something and honestly learning it and truly believing it is very different. And also, for me, it was learning about it. And if you truly believe something, that changes your actions. It changes your interactions. And it changes how you see the world. And how you judge the decisions and make your decisions that you are going to do, how you're going to interact, how you're going to live your life. And so from a personal level, I've grown a lot in that, and then from like with parenting and being a husband and a business owner. And 2020 has been a great year in the growth department. Despite it being a very difficult year overall. But, I've gotten to one of the things that's been really great is getting to really hang out with like a friend that, a lot of people have done this through COVID. They kind of create their own little pods. Like we're trying to reduce the number of people we're seeing. So instead of trying to balance this schedule where you're like, hanging out with these friends and these friends and these friends, like we really kind of were like, no, we need to be careful with what's going on. We do have people in our lives that are high risk and friends that are high risk, and we want to respect that, and we don't want to put them at risk by trying to go out and see everybody and do these things and then go see them. So we've been careful with how we're doing that. So part of that is kind of creating a pod and like, all right, well, these are the people that we've decided like we're really kind of investing in. These are the people we're going to hang out with. And one of those people was a good friend of mine I grew up with. And over this last year, due to COVID, we've really got to reignite our friendship that we had as kids. And really get to re-know each other because, you're kids, you're in high school, and then you go off to college and you go off to do these things, and you don't really circle back sometimes, or you do, but it's not quite the same. And over this last year, we've really got to like, okay, well, what's happened over the last 10 years? Because we haven't seen each other really. We've had our own lives we're living. And so there's been these nuggets of really, really good things that have happened because of COVID. Had that not happened, I would have been hyper involved in all of these other things that I do, whether that's with my church or families within the church that we would have had over instead of like hanging out with my friend. And we would have been out meeting new people. And, there would have been all these different things. It would have been a normal year. There would have been events going on and all these different things. So anyways, all that to be said that, it's been a good year despite everything that's going on. And obviously we're not through it yet. We're coming up, we've now hit January and we are now looking at, there's a vaccine coming out, but the layout of that is complicated and, there's just a massive shortage. So like, when will we really be quote unquote out of this? Nobody really knows. But there's been good things that have come out of 2020. And, we've learned a lot in that. We've seen how businesses can evolve and change to cope with change. And we're probably going to stay in some state of this to some degree. Like, this is now, like, you're never going to think about, like, shaking someone's hand the same way, or every time you touch a surface in a store or a public place, you're going to think about that way more than you did before. Like even opening a door, you're going to stop and be like, wait, should I use my sleeve for this door? Or like, so it's just, there's going to be things that it's totally different than it used to be. And they're just going to be ingrained in our heads because that's what we've now lived a year of this intense, like talking about it. And, but despite all of that, I think we've gone through a lot of growth. I think there's a lot of good things that have come through COVID. My heart goes out to anyone who has lost anyone to it. Over in 2020, actually right near the beginning of COVID, I lost my grandma, and it wasn't to COVID directly. But she was very stressed about everything that was going on, and she had heart conditions, and that ended up being the final thing is her heart. But, stress and things like that can be, are very taxing. And so, she's kind of more of like a tertiary death of COVID. Like it wasn't directly related to COVID, but it was because of what was going on that I think her heart gave out. There was so much hype and fear around it. It's not that, it was just that people didn't know how to react to it. So there was overreaction, there was underreactions, there was both sides of that coin. And, so I think, that was something that we had to deal with during COVID. And like, obviously we still aren't able to have funerals or at least large ones or anything like that. So it was, we've lost people in this last year. We've known a lot of people who have friends or family that have passed away. And, again, my heart goes out to those people. And this has ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would end up being. Anyways, I just really wanted to give everyone kind of an update on the podcast, update on myself, what I've learned over this last year, what I've learned in business, about business over this last year, how I've grown personally, and kind of what I see as the future for 2021 for the podcast, for my business, for my family. I'm optimistic. Despite everything going on, I'm very optimistic that it's going to be a great year. Looking forward to see what it all brings. And again, thank you guys. Thank you all for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for supporting me by listening and taking that time to listen to podcast episodes as they come out. And thank you for sharing it with your friends and family. I'm looking forward to this new year. I've got some fun episodes that I have planned. Even really early on, like my next episode that I'm planning, this is kind of a spoiler, but I'm planning on interviewing my wife, which if you listen back to episode 70 with Emily Harmon Waterlow, she suggested that I interview my wife, and it's something I had thought about, but hadn't put it oh no, I actually should do this, because for you guys have been listening to my voice for a year and a half-ish, which is again crazy to me, but really exciting. And so I was like, but people don't know my wife. They haven't got to talk to her. They haven't got to hear from her. And everything I do with the business, with the podcast, within the family is 10x'd because of my wife. And it's not an exaggeration. It's not. My wife is the most amazing person I know. We have the 4 kids, and on top of that, she has just done. She continues to do so much. She cares so much for people. I am caring if I hear about something where I can do something and interact, but she intuitively can know when someone needs to be cared for and reaches out and helps that person. She's an excellent mom to our 4 kiddos, and our 4 kids, I love them to death, but they are crazy. They take after me. I was crazy as a kid, so much energy, constantly jumping around, and my kids take after me in that way. And so she's in the house with 4 hyper crazy kids. And despite that, still gets things done. She's homeschooling them. She's been homeschooling them since they started, and just there's just so much that she does, and that she. I can't say enough about her, and so I'm really looking forward for you guys to hear that podcast, to listen to that, and then. I've got another podcast that's coming out that I'll be doing is one with one of my friend, my good friend, that I was referencing before. But getting to again, just letting people hear about his business that he's done and his journey, because he's just done so much, and again, done so much in just this last year. So I'm really excited to bring that to you as well. So. Plus, like I said, there's some podcasts and some guests that I want to revisit and re-talk to, and see how they're doing now and how they've evolved and changed and everything through COVID. So anyways, there's a lot coming. I'm stoked to bring this all to you. I'm really happy that you guys are here and listening, and it means a lot to me, and I really appreciate you guys. So anyways, all that being said, check out all the podcasts. They're on all your favorite podcast platforms. And and with that, I will see you guys on the next episode.